One last thing. Who's the better pilot? You or me?
What's up everybody, Ryan here, welcome to the channel. If you haven't been here before, I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, and commercial pilot, and I use that experience to break down epic aviation videos, stories, and subjects you can send my way on Instagram, or just give me a shout and say hello. Today we're going to be talking about the Top Gun Maverick, Iceman, and Maverick scene. I'll give you some real world context at the very end. I'll tell you a story about someone that kind of reminds me of this dynamic, some people that I saw that kind of had this dynamic in fighter squadrons. Should be fun for you to be able to compare that. Before we get going, if you would, just dominate that like button. Maybe even subscribe. Every time you like and subscribe, a pilot somewhere gets their wings. Let's dive in. So obviously the context right now is Iceman is the commander of the Pacific fleets. Maverick's coming to talk to him to get some advice due to his struggles with Rooster and just overall struggles with this mission, because as Maverick will say here in a little bit, he's not an instructor. He's more of a fighter pilot, and I definitely know how Maverick feels. Wonder how I know that. Becoming an instructor was definitely challenging for me. I did it towards the later part of my career because it was just something that, to me, I wanted to rage. I wanted to go fast. I wanted to use stick and rudder skills. I didn't want to worry too much about teaching. Now, some might say that's a flaw. Sure, it's the first one that I've ever heard about myself. Just kidding. So at the end of the day, we all have different skills and talents that we bring to the table. And I knew a lot of awesome instructors and they were great at what they did. I really appreciated them for that, and I appreciated that they were able to do that better than I could. And then when I ended up becoming an instructor towards the end, I went into the instructor programs screaming and kicking, trying to stay out of them. But at the end of the day, when I was teaching and instructing, to me, it was just a really cool experience, but you do have to access this different level of yourself. That's how I think of it. It's like a different level of basically rising above, looking at things from a 50,000 foot perspective and understanding that people don't learn the same way you do, they don't fly the same way you do. And to me, it was a really humbling experience. And especially being an instructor on the Thunderbirds, when the margins for error are just crazy slim, you really have to zen out and be in a position where you can see things happening before they happen to prevent mistakes and accidents from happening. So at the end of the day, tip of the old hat to the instructors out there, and let's continue. So Iceman telling Maverick it's time to let go. Maybe Maverick is the first fighter pilot ever to have control issues. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely never had control issues. As a fighter pilot, you definitely see things happening, you envision them happening, you set goals, you have basically an outcome in mind prior to each mission, and you're holding on tight, you're making sure that happens. And then again, when you go into an instructor role, especially with a high stakes instruction environment like Top Gun, the weapons school, or the mission that is about to take place, at the end of the day, you're accessing different areas of yourself, but you're also holding on to that control. So let's continue. I think any fighter pilot, if they're being honest with you, they're gonna have this same barrier. They're gonna have this same wall up. To all the wives and girlfriends or husbands and boyfriends of fighter pilots out there, you probably know a little bit about what I'm talking about. It's a trap! But fighter pilots definitely can have emotional barriers to seeing things from different perspectives or letting go of control. And that's definitely the dynamic here that Iceman is trying to help Maverick with. And I just think it's awesome that they're highlighting this friendship dynamic, because at the end of the day, fighter pilots bring different things to the table in their personalities as well. And some fighter pilots can open up better to others than others can. So I remember there was a quick story I'll share with you, and maybe I had some ability to help other fighter pilots open up in certain ways, and they helped me open up in certain ways as well, especially when I was trying to become an instructor. But I remember there was this one time we went out on a 4-ship flight, And the number 3, I was leading the formation of 4 F-15Es. The number 3 was about to go in the 4-ship upgrade. And I remember the way that he was talking on the radio to his wingman, it was honestly just condescending. It was extremely condescending to that young wingman. And so when we got back, I was like, look, did he really, make that big of a mistake for you to, kind of have that tone in your voice? Or maybe you didn't even notice that tone in your voice. But I think if you keep doing that to someone when it's not well-founded, they're just gonna lose respect for you. So it was received extremely well. And I think that the pilot that I said that to saw me as a friend at that point and saw me as someone that they could turn to and go to for advice. And then likewise, I started getting advice from him because he was an exceptionally skilled aviator. So for him, it was more of like coming to me for advice on how to relate to people. And for me, I was kind of going to him for more of an advice on how to get better with tactics and things like that. So at the end of the day, in fighter squadrons, iron sharpens iron and you're all kind of leveling up. That can happen with stick and rudder skills. It can happen with the beeps and squeaks, the studying skills, and it can happen with how to relate to people, how to be a better instructor, how to garner the respect and build a reputation with the young folks that are coming up trying to learn.
I'm not a teacher, Ice. I'm a fighter pilot. A naval aviator. It's not what I am. It's who I am. How do I teach that? Even if I could teach it, it's not what Rooster wants. It's not what the Navy wants.
As a fighter pilot, especially when you're strong and solid in your game, you go to this little happy place, especially when you're flying single seat fighters, but it can happen as well if you're flying with a Wizzo, where you're just so good at your job. And a lot of times this happens for late captains in the Air Force or early majors. So you get to a point where you're just so good at what you're doing because you've done it so many times that you don't talk a lot, you don't speak a lot, and you do get this feeling of I can do this on my own. And it gets really good though when you get a Wizzo who's extremely skilled as well, and then you guys kind of team up together. And there were moments for me flying the F-15E where pretty much all flight, I don't think the Wizzo and I said one thing to each other. But you might think that that sounds bad, but you could see what the other one was doing on our screens. They're called situation displays, where we could see where the other person was moving their cursors, the things they were doing. And it was like we were working so well together, just like a well-oiled machine, like a basketball team that had played together for years, that we didn't need to say a lot. We just made it happen. And then we executed with the proper techniques that didn't take a ton of words. So I think that's important to highlight.
That's why they canned me the last time. The only reason I'm here is you. If I send him on this mission, he might never come home. And if I don't send him, he'll never forgive me. Either way, I could lose him forever. I know. I know. The Navy needs Maverick. The kid needs Maverick. That's why I fought for you. That's why you're still here.
This part is crucial. So when Iceman says the Navy needs Maverick, Rooster needs Maverick, he's acknowledging the fact that characters like Maverick are super important. And this goes back to figures like Robin Olds. Now the Air Force basically shuns Robin Olds in certain ways, but they know if you really ask the ones at the top, the spirit of the fighter pilot, what does that mean? Well, it's someone who dedicates themselves to getting better every single day. It's someone who finds creative and innovative ways to tackle problems and beat the enemy. And it's someone who wins. And that's what the Navy wants. They might not come out and say it. The Navy's probably better at doing it than the Air Force. The Air Force won't just come out and say, we need figures like Robin Olds. We believe in the fighter pilot. They won't come out and say that straight up, but they say that in other ways by supporting these figures like Maverick to rise more towards the top or to go on missions that they might not be selected for otherwise. And that's why this friendship is huge. And this is why it highlights the fact that Iceman recognizes game in Maverick, because he knows that Maverick's a super relatable figure. He embodies the spirit of the fighter pilot. At the end of the day, it's an undeniable spirit. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have that spirit of the fighter pilot, you're gonna succeed, you're gonna do well in whatever it is you're doing. So Iceman knows that if he puts Maverick in this position, and a little bit of Maverick is able to rub off on these other naval aviators, that the mission will be successful. Because that spirit that never dies, that spirit that moves forward no matter what and drives a team to a higher level, innovates, is creative, is approachable, is credible, and then wins, that's what the Navy wants. That's what the Air Force wants, and it's undeniable. So the fact that Iceman right now is kind of representing the bigger Navy, and he has an appreciation for that spirit, is crucial, and it's something that I want you to just cling to and hold on to. And hey, who knows? Maybe in your job or profession, intertwine a little bit of that spirit of Robin Olds, of Maverick, because we all relate to that in some ways, because we all recognize that it's success, it's game recognizing game, it's moving the team forward that really matters.
Thank you, Ice, for everything.
One last thing. Who's the better pilot? You or me?
This is a nice moment. Let's not ruin it.
So that's perfect, because at the end of the day, rivals who then become friends are always gonna have a little bit of that edge. And that leads me to the story that I promised you. I'm a man of my word. You stay to the end so you get the bonus story. There was a fellow aviator when I was going through pilot training. We actually did ROTC together. His name was Alec. He was an epic pilot. Even through pilot training, he was rising up. He was the top of the class. And I remember we were rivals. We were bitter rivals to a point where, you know, the first few months of pilot training was like, how do I beat this guy? And he was doing the same thing to me. How do I beat this guy? And then towards the middle of pilot training, we started to see that we could learn from each other. And we honestly started having fun together. You know, we'd go play football together, or, you know, we'd go out in the town together. And we realized that even though we were so different, in my mind, Alec was more like Iceman. He was more of the one that was gonna rise to the top, who was gonna be a general or an admiral in Iceman's case. And he was more oriented towards that line of success. Whereas for me, I was more oriented towards the appreciate people, go big, but also my focus was on stick and rudder skills and not necessarily rising to the top of the promotion ranks, if you can't tell. But at the end of the day, game recognized game, and that's why we started to become such good friends. But that little bit of rivalry never went away. And I'll say, unfortunately, Alec did die in a plane crash in a T-38, but he was pushing that jet to the limit. He was max performing it. It was just early on in his career. So I want to dedicate this video to him and to his family, to Alec Littler's family. You guys are all awesome. And to Alec, I hope you're up there in the sky, flying through the clouds, my friend. Blue skies always. To everybody else watching, just want to say thanks so much for being here. You guys are awesome. If you have any other ideas for stories, hit me up on the Instagram. Go ahead and download that like button. Before you go, most of all, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for helping me grow this channel. Have a great day.